Hey there, this is John with Nashville Travel Concierge, and right now we're on our way to Madame Tussaud's Museum in Nashville, Tennessee. To get there are actually two exits off of Riley Parkway in Nashville to get to the museum, and one of them is the scenic route, which is sort of what I'm taking right now. Madame Tussaud's is located at Opry Mills Mall, which happens to be about a 2-minute walk from the Grand Ole Opry. That's another place when you come to Nashville that you should check out and enjoy a tour or even a show there. So here we go. And here we are inside Opry Mills Mall, and as we'll learn quickly, each of the Madame Tussauds museums have a specific theme that's connected to the area that it is found. Of course, here in Nashville, that theme will be music. And this first section will introduce us to some of the famous pioneers of music. And here we can see Bob Dylan, Muddy Waters, and Duke Ellington on the piano. The folks at Madame Tussauds want you to have a good time when you visit. They have one rule, and that is you cannot touch any of the figures. Saying that, well, you can actually get pretty darn close. And if you look around on the walls and in different areas, there are props that you can use to have your picture taken with the different figures in the museum. You'll have to wait until the end to see if I took part in any of this. And as we round the corner, who could this be? It is Whitney Houston. And across from Whitney, standing there with a guitar in hand, is country music great George Strait. It was explained to me that each figure represents a certain time period in the performer's life. In the center of the room, we have a representation of the WSM Tower. WSM is the radio station that brought the Grand Ole Opry into existence. Although Nashville is known as Music City, country music is number one. The house you see in the background here was once owned by Roy Acuff, one of country music's predominant figures many years ago. And it looks like we're now approaching the likeness of a radio station. And if we look on the wall, we see 650 AM WSM. And the first performer we have here is country singer Little Jimmy Dickens. And very popular with country music fans, Jimmy had several hits. His most famous was May the Bluebird of Paradise Fly Up Your Nose. And across from Little Jimmy is Hank Williams, one of the greatest performers in country music. As we walk into the inner workings of the studio and look up on the wall, we see a plaque that says, "Hey, good looking." This is one of Hank Williams' most famous songs. And here we are approaching some of the equipment that they used back years ago in radio stations, and a lot of these, of course, they don't use anymore. These are very antique, and at the end I see an oscilloscope, which I find really interesting. I'm not sure why they would have that here. And here's the board that they use to help the performers sound better, and it's a nice little setup to have here. And we're approaching now, and we're about to look up at Mr. George Jones. George was one of the more interesting performers and people in the Nashville area when he was here. And if you get to come to Nashville, you'll probably hear a lot of stories about him. And right across from George is one of his wives, Tammy Wynette, who sang "Stand By Your Man." And here in the production area of the studio, we have Patsy Cline. Who knows? She may be singing crazy. To film this, I'm using my Panasonic G7 DSLR camera. I will have an Amazon affiliate link in the Show More section below, just to let you know how this works. If you happen to buy anything from any of the links that I show you, the cost doesn't change because of this. I do get paid by Amazon, but it does not affect your cost at all. And what is this? After leaving the WSM studio, we're at the Grand Ole Opry, and here are some of the more famous performers that played in the Opry. And here we have Kenny Rogers dressed as the Gambler. And now we're coming up to Randy Travis, who is one of the favorites here in Nashville. He's had a lot of hard luck recently because of his health, and so we all hope that he starts getting better. And now we see Butcher Hollow on this well, and if you look up, there she is, Loretta Lynn. And what is this? Some form of deja vu? It was just a couple weeks ago that we visited the Dukes of Hazzard Museum over at Cooters, and it looks like we're gonna take a look at there's Waylon Jennings, who sang the lead song of the TV show, and he's leaning against another replica of the General Lee. And here we are approaching Minnie Pearl, and she was one of the favorites of a lot of people years ago. And if you get a chance to look at the price tag on her hat, it would say $1.98 for the price of that hat. And now we're approaching a group of very famous early rockers kind of jamming together. Let's see what we have here. And as we walk closer, it looks like they have one of those recording machines that you can make your own little record. And did I? No, I did not. Let's keep walking. And now we are approaching a relatively young Johnny Cash. And next to Johnny, we have Ray Price. On piano, we have a very young Jerry Lee Lewis. And on main vocals, we have the King of Rock, Elvis Presley. I hope you're enjoying my video. If you are, at the end, please hit the like button. If you're not enjoying it, hit the dislike button, because that's how I know that I need to improve. And we are now approaching Jimi Hendrix. For those of you who are Hendrix fans, please list your favorite song in the comments section below, and if you have a reason for that, put that down too. And here we are coming up to B.B. King. And if you look on the top of his guitar, you'll see the name Lucille, the name of the guitar, and the title of one of his biggest songs. And now we're rounding another corner and going into a section dedicated to soul music. And here we have Marvin Gaye. Likewise with Marvin Gaye, if you have a favorite song you'd like to share with us, let us know, and I'd be quite interested in knowing that. And here we have Diana Ross, a superstar and one of the first performers for Motown with the Supremes. And on piano, we have Stevie Wonder. Near Stevie, we have the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. From Motown, we move into blues and jazz. Singing next to Louis Armstrong, we have Ella Fitzgerald. And there he is, Satchmo, and with his trumpet and his famous grin. And I think these are actually pretty good figures. Moving on to the other side of the room, we have Billie Holiday. Looking back at the Diana Ross figure, I can't help but be reminded that she played Billie in the movie Lady Sings the Blues. And as we turn the corner again, here we have Elton John. Just next to Elton is Katy Perry. And as we make this wide turn, there's Miley Cyrus on the wrecking ball. And we now move closer to Bruno Mars. Of course, up on the stage is Beyonce. Another room change, and here we are with Luke Bryant. And as we move closer to Blake Shelton, I wanted to let you know that I appreciate any comments that you leave. And here we have Tim McGraw, and I'd like to know if any of you know who Tim McGraw's father was. Put the answer in the comment section below if you know that. And speaking of Tim McGraw, here is his wife, Faith Hill. And this is kind of interesting. Here's the head of Darius Rucker, who some of you know as the singer from Hootie the Blowfish, as well as being a country singer. And his figure is talking, explaining how the figures are made and how they actually did the process of him speaking on this little presentation they have here. And here we are moving on to a Grand Ole Opry stage, and we have Eric Church right there. That is Jason Aldean. Of course, that is Reba. And that is Carrie Underwood. And here is Alan Jackson. And as I'm rubbing elbows with Minnie Pearl and doing some picking with B.B. King, I wanted to thank you all for stopping by this week. I'm not sure if Ozzy knew that I was even there. And before I left, I tried to get some musical vibes from Michael. It didn't happen.